It's been about 7 decades since the inception of F1, and only 2 drivers hold the prime record of 7 World Drivers' Championship: the F1 legend Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. And at this point, Hamilton is pretty much a legend himself. From having one of the best rookie seasons in F1 history to accumulating the highest number of race wins in the sport, the iconic Briton has shown just how extraordinary and mesmerizing he can be on the tracks. But how did he get to this point? Stay tuned as we check out the legendary rise of Lewis Hamilton. Karting days. Born and raised in Stevenage, Hertfordshire, it's pretty much expected that the 7-time world champion started out as a karting sensation at the tender age of 8. And at just 13 years old, he became the youngest racing driver ever to be signed by a Formula One team when he joined the McLaren Young Driver program in 1998. Now, how did he achieve that? Well, Hamilton was an enviable natural at karting, and he quickly started racking up wins and nabbing cadet class championships left and right. By the time he was just 10 years old, he had already become the youngest driver ever to win the British Cadet Karting Championship. Not too shabby, eh? But Lewis had bigger dreams. One day he approached the big boss of the McLaren Formula One team, Ron Dennis, at an awards ceremony. With a smile on his face, he introduced himself and said, "Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. I won the British Championship, and one day I want to be racing your cars." Now that's some serious ambition. But Ron was impressed. He wrote a message in Lewis's autograph book that said, "Phone me in 9 years, we'll sort something out then." And after Lewis Hamilton's impressive wins in both the Super 1 Series and the British Championship in 1998, Ron Dennis, the big cheese at McLaren, picked up the phone and gave him a call. It turns out Dennis had been keeping an eye on Lewis's progress, and he knew he had a young prodigy on his hands. So he offered Lewis a spot in the prestigious McLaren driver development program. But that wasn't all. The contract also included an option for Lewis to secure a future Formula One seat, which would make him the youngest driver ever to get a contract that landed in a Formula One drive. And he wasn't stopping there. He went on to show his improvement in the Intercontinental A, Formula A, and Formula Super A before eventually winning the European Championship in 2000 with maximum points. While racing for Formula A and Formula Super A, it's worth noting that his teammate was none other than Nico Rosberg, whom he would meet later in his Formula One career. Formula 3 and Formula Renault era. Lewis Hamilton kicked off his car racing career back in 2001 when he took part in the British Formula Renault Winter Series. Although he finished 5th in the standings, it was just the beginning of bigger things to come. The following year, the British driver joined Manor Motorsport for the Formula Renault UK campaign, and he finished an impressive 3rd overall. Not one to sit on his laurels, he went on to win the championship the following year ahead of Alex Lloyd. But his debut in the season finale of the British Formula 3 Championship was marred by bad luck. In his first race, he was forced to retire with a puncture, and in the second, he crashed out and was rushed to hospital after a crash with Tor Graves, his teammate. Despite his up and downs, Lewis was determined to make it to Formula One, but he wasn't focused on becoming the youngest driver in the history of the sport. Instead, he wanted to gain valuable experience and then prove himself when the time came. In 2004, he made his debut in the Formula 3 Euro Series with Manor, ending the year in 5th place. He also won the Bahrain F3 Super Prix and competed in the Macau F3 Grand Prix twice. Williams was keen on signing the Briton, but the deal fell through because their engine supplier at the time, BMW, wouldn't fund him. So Lewis eventually re-signed with McLaren. It wasn't all smooth sailing though. There was a disagreement between Lewis's father, Anthony, and McLaren's then executive, Martin Whitmarsh. Anthony wanted Lewis to move up to GP2 for 2005, but Whitmarsh felt that he should stay in F3 for another year. Whitmarsh even tore up Lewis's contract. But Lewis didn't give up. He called Whitmarsh 6 weeks later and re-signed with the team. By 2005, Lewis was racing for ASM in the Euro Series, and he dominated the championship, winning an impressive 15 of the 20 rounds. He also won the Marlboro Masters of Formula 3 at Zandvoort. It was clear that Lewis Hamilton was a rising star in the world of motorsport, and by that time, Hamilton was ready to take on GP2 Championship. GP2 era. So, in 2006, Hamilton moved to Art Grand Prix, the sister team of ASM, to compete in the GP2 Championship. He won the championship in his first attempt, beating out Timo Glock and Nelson Piquet Jr. Hamilton's impressive performances included a dominant win at the Nürburgring despite a penalty for speeding in the pit lane, overtaking two rivals at Beckett during his home race at Silverstone and recovering from a spin to finish second in Istanbul. He ultimately won the championship after Giorgio Pantano was stripped of the fastest lap in the Monza feature race, handing Hamilton the final point he needed. As Hamilton was dominating GP2, McLaren was looking for a new driver to replace Juan Pablo Montoya and Kimi Raikkonen, who had departed for NASCAR and Ferrari respectively. After much speculation, it was confirmed that Hamilton would be the team's second driver for the 2007 season alongside defending champion Fernando Alonso. However, the news wasn't made public yet, even though the deal was sealed in September. Why though? At that point, the reigning F1 legend, none other than the 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher, was retiring for the first time at the end of the 2006 season, and such huge news would have readily overshadowed the news of Hamilton joining McLaren. But after about 2 months, the world knew that Hamilton was stepping into F1. However, no one was ready for what the young genius driver had in store for Formula One. Formula One career. So when Hamilton first joined Formula One, he was paired up with a 2-time defending world champion, Fernando Alonso. Interestingly, Hamilton is the first and only black driver to ever race in the series. Talk about breaking barriers. In his very first race, Hamilton managed to make it onto the podium, and from there he just kept getting better and better. In fact, he set a bunch of records during his debut season, like the most consecutive podium finishes ever for a rookie, which was 9 by the way. He also tied the record for the most wins in a debut season, with 4 under his belt. Although Hamilton just missed out on the World Drivers' Championship that year, losing by a single point to Kimi Raikkonen, he still managed to set the record for the most points ever scored by a rookie driver in their debut season. Now, that's what we call talent, already aiming for the championship in his debut year. Hamilton might have lost that year's championship by 1 point, but come 2008, he was better and ready for the crown. His success in Formula One continued in 2008 with an impressive 5 victories and 10 podium finishes. As the season drew to a close in Brazil, the championship battle came down to a 2-horse race between the hometown hero, Felipe Massa, and Hamilton himself. In the end, Hamilton managed to clinch his first championship title in nail-biting fashion with an incredible last-lap overtake of Timo Glock that secured him 5th position and the championship win. It was truly a moment for the ages, and Hamilton became the youngest Formula One world champion in history at that time. Not only that, but he also managed to deny Massa the championship win by just 1 point. This incredible achievement made Hamilton the first British driver to win the World Championship since Damon Hill back in 1996. It was a historic moment, and one that cemented Hamilton's status as one of the greatest drivers of his generation. Even in his last 4 years with McLaren, Hamilton was still managing to rack up podium finishes and race victories left and right. In fact, in the 2010 season, he entered the final round with a real shot at the championship, but unfortunately, he ended up finishing 4th overall as Sebastian Vettel took home his first ever driver's title. The following season was a bit of a tough one for Hamilton as he found himself outscored by his teammate for the first time ever. Jenson Button managed to finish as the runner-up to champion Sebastian Vettel, while Hamilton had a number of personal distractions and run-ins with FIA officials that led him to finishing way down in 5th place in the standings. Nevertheless, Hamilton vowed to bounce back stronger than ever in 2012. And bounce back he did. That season, Hamilton managed to win 4 races and finished 4th overall in the standings, which was a pretty impressive feat. But before the year was even over, Hamilton made a shocking announcement. He would be leaving McLaren to join the Silver Arrows for the 2013 season, taking over from the retiring Michael Schumacher. It was a big move that surprised a lot of people, but Hamilton was ready for a new challenge and was excited to see what the future held. Mercedes reign. After a successful stint with McLaren, Hamilton signed with Mercedes in 2013 and has been driving for them ever since. When Hamilton signed with Mercedes in 2013, it was a bit of a surprise for everyone, especially since he was going to be teamed up with his old karting buddy Nico Rosberg. Now, some people thought it was a risky move since Mercedes didn't have a great track record of success at that point, but Hamilton was ready for a new challenge and eager to see what he could do with the Silver Arrows. In his first season with the team, Hamilton managed to win one race, the Hungarian Grand Prix, and also picked up a bunch of podium finishes and pole positions. Unfortunately, he still ended up finishing 4th in the standings, which was starting to become a bit of a pattern for him. But things were about to change. In 2014, the rules for Formula 1 racing changed, requiring teams to use turbo hybrid engines. That shift marked the beginning of a very successful era for Hamilton and Mercedes. That year, the team won a whopping 16 out of 19 races, with Hamilton himself winning 11 of them. He spent the entire season locked in a battle with his teammate Rosberg for the championship title and ultimately came out on top to claim his second driver's title. Not only that, but Hamilton's victory tally that season actually surpassed all other British drivers who came before him. It was a huge accomplishment and Hamilton was ecstatic. After winning the final race in Abu Dhabi, he got on the team radio and declared, "This is the greatest day of my life." In that same season, the Hamilton 44 was birthed due to the new rule introduced that allowed drivers to choose a unique car number to use for their entire career, and the Briton decided to go for his former karting number, which he hasn't deserted since then. In 2015, before the start of the racing season, Hamilton made an interesting decision. As the reigning world champion, he had the option to switch his car number to 1, but he decided to stick with his career number 44. This was a big deal because it was the first time since 1994 that the field didn't have a car with the number 1 on it. Anyway, the 2015 season turned out to be a great one for Hamilton. I guess he didn't need the luck of number 1 after all. He won 10 races and finished on the podium a record 17 times, which was really impressive. He even won his 3rd World Championship title, which was a huge deal because he matched the achievement of his hero, Ayrton Senna. But things weren't all smooth sailing for Hamilton. He had a pretty intense rivalry going on with his teammate Rosberg, and things came to a head during the US Grand Prix. The two had an epic battle going wheel to wheel, but Hamilton ultimately came out on top and clinched the title with 3 races to go. After the season, Hamilton inked a new contract with Mercedes for 3 more years, reportedly worth more than £100 million. This made him one of the highest paid drivers in Formula 1, which is pretty impressive. Plus, he also got to keep his image rights and all of his championship winning cars and trophies, which is pretty unusual in the sport. In 2016, Hamilton was on fire. He had more pole positions and race wins than any other driver that year, which is pretty impressive. But despite his amazing performance, he ended up losing the driver's title to his teammate Rosberg by just 5 points. Now, the team's policy of letting the two drivers fight it out on the track led to some pretty heated exchanges both during and after the races. Things came to a head at the season finale in Abu Dhabi when Hamilton ignored team orders and deliberately slowed down to try and back Rosberg into the chasing pack, hoping that the other drivers would overtake him and give Hamilton a shot at the title. Unfortunately, it didn't work out and Rosberg held on to win. A few things worked against Hamilton that year. He had a string of poor starts early on in the season which didn't help his cause, and then in Malaysia he had a crucial engine blowout that pretty much sealed his fate. In the end, Rosberg retired from the sport right after beating Hamilton, which was pretty shocking, but he went out on top, having secured the title and proven himself to be a worthy competitor. After Rosberg retired, Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel became Hamilton's main rival in the 2017 championship. They battled for the lead throughout the season and it was a tense fight. Hamilton broke the record for most pole positions by registering 11 that year. He was really consistent, finishing every race with points, and his new teammate, Valtteri Bottas, didn't pose much of a challenge. Hamilton won 9 races and secured his 4th World Drivers' title, even though he was behind Vettel in points during the first half of the season. He ultimately clinched the title in Mexico with 2 races left, bagging his 4th championship, and he was soon ready for the next. The 2018 season was hyped up by journalists and fans as the fight for 5 because it was the first time 2 4-time world champions, Hamilton and Vettel, would be competing for a 5th title. Ferrari and Vettel seemed to be doing well for most of the season, leading the standings until the halfway point. But Vettel's season fell apart because of driver and mechanical errors, while Hamilton won 6 out of 7 races in the second half of the season. He won the title for the 2nd year in a row in Mexico and set a new record for most points scored in a season by accumulating 408 points. Holding tight to Hamilton, Mercedes sealed a 2-year contract that was reportedly estimated at £40 million per year, making him the highest paid Formula 1 driver. In 2019, Hamilton defended his title once again. He was leading the driver standings for most of the season, fighting off challenges from Bottas, Verstappen and Leclerc to win his 6th driver's crown at the United States Grand Prix with 2 races left. In the last race of the season, the Briton scored his 6th career Grand Slam and ended the season with 17 podiums and 11 wins. He also achieved 5 pole positions and set a new all-time record for most points in a season with 413 points. This record was eventually beaten by Max Verstappen in 2022 when he clinched his 2nd championship title and finished with a total of 454 points. The next season came around fast and Hamilton was more than ready to defend his crown for the 3rd time in a row. In 2020, Hamilton won his 7th driver's title, tying Schumacher's record in a season that was heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. He won 11 races, including one in Portugal that broke Schumacher's record for most wins, which was 91. He also had 14 podiums and 10 pole positions, but he missed the Sakhir Grand Prix after contracting COVID-19, which was his first race absence since his debut in 2007. He clinched the title at the Turkish Grand Prix with 3 rounds to spare and finished the season 124 points ahead of Bottas in the standings. The Turkish race was an outstanding one because the defending champion went from a depressing 6th place due to a poor qualifying to getting the checkered flag. Ultimately, the 2021 season ended his championship streak when he lost to Max Verstappen in a fierce battle and a controversial finale. But get this does not in any way imply that Hamilton had a poor season. Despite not winning the title, he was still setting records by becoming the first driver to reach both 100 pole positions and 100 wins in Formula 1 history. Plus, he still managed to help Mercedes win their 8th consecutive Constructors' title, which is by no means any small feat. The 2022 season was not a good year for the Silver Arrows, and due to multiple car issues following the introduction of their peculiar Zero side pods, Hamilton had a poor season, finishing in 6th place in the Drivers' Championship. However, with the start of the 2023 season, we're apprehensive about what Hamilton and Mercedes have in store for us. Will Hamilton retain his winning streak? Will he set another record by clinching his 8th title this year? Only this season can tell. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject though. Kindly stop by the comments below to let us know what you think, and thanks for tuning in.